emotional intelligence, and thank you, Ryan. My name is Joan Samuels-Dennis, and it was really great to be on the call this morning with Ryan, or this afternoon with Ryan and Charles, and to be talking about what's going on with all of us right now. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I am a nurse originally, transformed to a psychotherapist in Brampton, but I see clients all over. I've been to the States and other parts to assist folks in healing and overcoming things like depression and anxiety and PTSD. And so I focus on fear as kind of the root cause of every mental health issue that you can imagine. And what my practice is all about is teaching people to live fearlessly. I'm the author of the book 490, Forgive and Live Fearlessly. And in that book, I introduce folks to the method of forgiveness that I actually use in my practice. And I use my own life journey and my own forgiveness journey and my faith to teach people how to forgive and live fearlessly. I'm the principal editor of the book. It's a project and a series called Becoming, The Journey to Love. And in that book, there are 12 women who tell their stories about struggles with violence, whether that was emotional, physical, or sexual in nature, and how that impacted their emotional and physical well-being, and even just the way that they relate to other people. But that as they move through their own healing journey, forgiveness played a fundamental role in helping them to transform into what we call the most beautiful, true self. And I'm the creator of the Peace Ambassador program. So now that I'm at a stage where I've had people move through my program, and I kind of have an 8-session process that I help people to heal with. And so folks with depression often overcome their depression, sometimes in a single session, because I get right to the root cause of what that problem is. And then as I help them to forgive, they heal, and it's kind of magical to watch it all happen. So now that I'm in this place where I've been helping people heal for a long time, and I have a background in community mental health, I used to teach at York University and Humber College. I used to teach research. I used to teach community development. And so I have a wide and broad background that helps me to speak the way that I do and be as informed about some of the issues that are plaguing are the plight of our people. And so I have used that also to become a facilitator of truth, forgiveness, and reconciliation ceremonies. And I've done at least 4 of those now. And there's these magical things that again happen because the forgiveness we do is a prayer, and prayer is one of the most powerful healing tools that you can imagine. So we're going to talk about EI today, emotional intelligence, and I'm going to take you through a journey where we're going to talk about what the horizons look like for us as a people. And I think I was talking about it in terms of Black entrepreneurship, but I think given what has been happening in our environment of late, the violence towards African Americans, we are also seeing it here on our side. That is a pivotal issue, and it has always played a pivotal part in our emotional well-being. And it has played a part in the push and pull into entrepreneurship. So we're going to talk about what emotional intelligence is, how we build emotional intelligence within ourselves, how we might then build emotional intelligence within the teams of people that we work with, within our family, within our communities, and how we guard against predators, because you can be as emotional intelligent as possible, but one of the things that come with that is the ability to see a predator coming, and the ability to then be able to avoid that predator, or move around that predator, or overcome that predator if there is a need. And then I'm going to introduce you to that same activity that Ryan and Charles and I were talking about, where there are certain spots that we massage in order to keep our minds level and calm. So what is emotional intelligence? Some would say it's a combination of things, and that it's complex, that it's not about our intellect, but it's about our awareness of our emotions. So in their book, Travis Bradbury and Jean Greaves, they talk about emotional intelligence 2.0. So I really like this book. And at first, when I was introduced to it, really liked the definition that they gave. The challenge with this book is that it doesn't really help. There's an awareness that comes with doing some of their activities, but I think we can get to it like a lot faster, and that's what I'm going to teach you today. So emotional intelligence is a personal and social competence that allows us to connect and engage with others in a way that maintains our alignment with our deepest and purest desires, our truth. And so our truth can be told in a number of ways. Our truth is about who we are. Our truth is about what the problem is. Our truth is about what the solution is. Our truth is about how we love. Our truth is about how we fear, because it's those two emotions that kind of dictate how just humanity in general behaves. When we're talking about the different dimensions of personal and social competence, there are 4 elements that are woven into that. And so we talk first about self-awareness, and this is our ability to accurately perceive our emotions in time and then understand our tendencies across situations. So I'm going to give you an example of that, because I had a client this morning that I was working with, and it was a great example. He was talking about having difficulty with this whole George Floyd and the murder of George Floyd, the situation. He was having difficulty with, the riots. He was having difficulty with, fighting back. He was in a conversation with his sisters where really what he said eventually was this line: I felt like they were asking me to choose sides. And there's a lot of us that are like that. We often feel like a discussion about, race and the violence that has been done in relation to like riots and protests and those sorts of things, that we're being asked to pick a side. Are we gonna, be the good guys, or are we gonna be the bad guys? Are we going to do the same thing that they did, or, are we gonna actually create the world that we want to create? But as he said that, I was being asked to choose sides. I said to him, okay, you've just said something that you've said to me before. Can you connect the dots? And so he searched a little bit in his mind, and he went back to an earlier moment where his mother and father separated. And one of the things that his siblings did was they chose sides. In his mind, he did not choose sides. He chose both of his parents, but he felt that his siblings had kind of chosen sides. So even though now he's talking about something totally different and something that is at a much higher humanitarian level, for him, his sisters kind of drawing him into this conversation was still about choosing sides. And so our ability to be able to identify why we're thinking what we're thinking in a particular moment in time is what we call self-awareness. There's also self-management, which has to do with, okay, now I know the emotion that I'm experiencing. What do I do with it? And this is where self-control comes in. And so this is where our ability to use our awareness then boosts our ability to calm down and then also choose a course of action that won't be harmful to ourselves. So when I say harmful to ourselves, so if I go out and I'm angry, then I might react in a certain way that then spirals and has conditions or consequences that really at the end of the day are harmful to me. So if I'm angry and I hit my husband, for example, and the cops come and I'm arrested, really at the end of the day, my lack of discipline, my lack of self-control harms me and then causes more problems for me, and never mind everybody else. Then the second level is social competence. And this is where now, rather than being self-aware, you're socially aware. So this is our ability to pick up on emotions in other people as much as we're able to pick up on those emotions in ourselves, and to understand not only what they're feeling, but why they're feeling it, why they're thinking the way that they do. And sometimes that's quite a skill set, and sometimes we don't know people, but it's important for us to take notice of what people are experiencing. And so it's about maintaining our ability to focus and absorb critical information. And then the final piece of social competence then is about relationship management. So now that we're self-aware, now that we can manage ourselves, now that we're aware of the other, then it's about building relationships that work for us. So the idea being, as we are building our businesses, as we're building relationships with other people, especially in an atmosphere where we have to be collaborative and working with one another, then this helps us to stay connected. So even if I'm angry about something, I don't pull away. I don't end the relationship. Instead, I'm able to remain calm enough. I might even take a break, but what I don't do is I don't walk away to the point where I totally disconnect and end the relationship, which could otherwise have really negative consequences for me. I'm going to ask if there are any questions at this point before I go on. And you can unmute yourself if you want and ask the question, or you can type it in the chat.
Is there any way of getting startup money with having a business plan and stuff like that?
So I'm gonna leave that one for maybe you and Ryan to have a conversation about, because we're talking right now about emotional intelligence and how we would build that into an organization. And what you're talking about is startup funds.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you with that question to give you the resources.
Did you have a question about emotional intelligence or the presentation so far? Okay, Ryan, we can go on. Okay. So I have a protocol that I move everyone through as I help them heal. And I'm just going to briefly cover it because we're going to see it again a little bit later on. But the idea of knowing your fears. If you know what you fear, the next step is to overcome the fear. But you have to know what it is that you're afraid of. And we're not actually afraid of the things that are out there. We're afraid of the things that are in us. So when we talk about fears, what I want you to start thinking about is about a memory that for the longest time just keeps recurring. It's something that you think about on a regular basis. It's something that you'll tell other people about. And it's something that either was frightening or it suddenly happened, but it startled you enough in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to startle you to the point where you're like, ah. It could be startled where you shut down. It could be startled where you become sad. And so the response to the fear is varied. But what I want you to know is that if there is a moment like that, that you need to tune into that moment because it is the heartland of your fear center. So I help people to understand what the causes of how we respond to fear and what causes their fear. And I use a particular technique for helping each person to discover that. As part of moving through what I call a forgiveness process, we're discovering first what we fear, then we're also discovering our deepest love, our deepest desires, the way kind of we want the world to operate. So we also discover that as we become emotionally intelligent. Then the other piece is we have, I see the question, I'll come back to you in a second. So the next piece is to develop empathy, being able to have compassion for the other, being able to sense what they're feeling and recognize it for what it is and even the cause of it. Then also there are points in our experiences and in our journey that can become a point of wrong focus. So it's kind of like looking at A when you should be looking at B. And sometimes we're not aware of the things that distract us. So as we begin to look at both our fears and our loves and being empathetic, we then naturally become better at looking in the right direction. So the best way I can describe that is, like we're all taught how to drive, and one of the things that we have to look out for is black ice. But if you do hit the black ice, one of the things that we're taught is to look in the direction that you actually want to go, not where the car is going. So a lot of the times when we're emotional, what we'll do is we'll look at the person who we think is the cause of the emotion. But really what we need to do is look in the direction that we really want to go. So what do I want in this situation? And how do I get to that place? And there's an underlying belief. When we do know better, we do better, right? So we behave the way that we do until we learn a lesson, and that lesson then makes us more self-aware. And once we're self-aware, then we begin to act differently. The final piece is to guard our identity. Eventually, we all come to this place where we look in the mirror and we say to ourselves, oh, there I am. That's my identity. This is who I am. These are my characteristics. This is my personality. These are the things that I love. These are the things that I don't love. This is my truth. And once you know your identity, your true identity, then you begin to protect it. You don't allow other people to come in and tell you who you are, where you're supposed to be going, what you're supposed to be doing. Instead, you become very creative and very protective around your identity. So I see that there are questions. Did you want to turn on your mic and ask the question as well?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Dr. Joan.
Hi.
Hi, yeah. My question was, so I'm a nurse. I've been practicing for like 14 years. I have my degree, but I've been having this for years, a reoccurring, I guess you would say it's a nightmare. It's not a dream, but it's that I'm supposed to write my certification exam for my nursing license.
Yes.
And either I'm stuck on the subway or something happens and I can't write the exam, and I go through all those emotions of like fear, palpitations, anxiety. It's a really intense dream. And then there's different versions of that dream that keep reoccurring, that like, I don't graduate, I don't get to walk across and get my degree. Like, so is that indicative of some sort of a fear that's in there?
I'm going to interpret the dream for you. The dream is actually more about your destiny. It's not about the exam. It's not about a job. And it's a fear of not actually doing the thing that you're supposed to do. It's a fear of not actually completing the assignment, right? So it's using what you already know to create space for you to connect the dots. But what I want you to do is go to a larger level where you begin to see it as more, God showing you, okay, so either you're going to miss the train, and I don't want you to miss the train. So you need to start getting on board in terms of what's the actual purpose, what's the actual destiny, right? Because you're going to miss the train, you're going to miss the train, you're going to miss the train. So now you need to go to a place where you begin to discover, okay, what is that destiny? What is that thing that I'm supposed to do? That's the way that I would interpret that dream.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I did have a question.
Yeah.
The point number 4 about your wrong focus.
Yes.
What are questions that you can ask yourself that would allow you to realize that you're focusing on the wrong thing, like while you're in the middle of it?
Right. So if, for example, so the last time we talked, you gave the example of being at work. No, let me use a different example altogether. The point of wrong focus is you figure that out as you move through the process. So what I'm talking about when I say the process is a forgiveness process. One of the first questions that we ask when we forgive anybody is, what do I want from them, right? And at the end of the day, what you're discovering when you answer that question is actually how you desire to love and how you desire other people to love you. Then the question after that is really just revealing what you get instead of what you want. And if we're not getting love, we're often getting fear. So if you are afraid, how does that show up? Then after that, what you're discovering is how you feel about the situation. So if you focus on your emotion, you're focused in the wrong direction, right? So if you are focused on the person, you're focused in the wrong direction. If you are focused on any of the kind of like how, I think, was it Kara that had the dream? I wasn't sure. But you know, if you're focused on the elements of the dream rather than the big grand picture that's being presented to you, you're having the wrong focus. If you're focused on just discovering, you know, which demon is in the room with you, it's the wrong focus. So what you need to do is figure out, what do I want? That's the right focus. What do I want? And then you project your focus towards that want, and that is what will come. If you focus on your fears and the emotions, more of that will come. So it's about pulling in, it's about saying a prayer, because every thought is a prayer, right? So as you have every single thought, what you are doing is you're praying. And as you're praying, things come. So now what you need to do is pray differently. And what that means is you have thoughts that direct you towards, what do I want? What do I want? And as you discover that, then more of that comes into your life. So that's what I mean by wrong focus. Any other questions? Did I answer that okay for you, Ryan?
Yes, that helps.
Okay. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay, we can go on to the next slide.
All right.
So we're talking about women of color in this slide, although certainly it could incorporate males as well. It was just the stats weren't there. On the Canadian side, we don't break down statistics according to race. We tend to just kind of, we look at income, financial status. We might even look at neighborhoods where people look, but for, you know, we've elected, let's say, not to look at color or not to look at race when we do most of our statistics. So what we are discovering is that 89% of new startups is with people of color. And these are tech companies. We're talking about opening local storefronts, gig economy kind of contracts, and then everything in between. And as we are looking at this, what we're also looking at is the fact that females are actually the drivers, that there is a great movement among female entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs. And then there's a challenge though that we're facing in terms of where we are, that oftentimes we don't scale up in the ways that we should. Oftentimes we are at 24,000 average revenue, and that's in comparison to all women or women-owned businesses, you know, including all races, so which usually sit at 143,000. So there's a huge gap, and what there is a suggestion that we have just a lot of things working against us. So an entrepreneur is described as someone who will jump off a cliff and assemble an airplane on the way down. The idea that you take a risk, you see an opportunity, you jump, and then you assemble all the things that you need so you can have like that level, safe landing. But you can go to the next one, Ryan. But for Black women especially, that we do that with very, very little resources. So the quote here is, Black women do it with a toothpick and a napkin, you know. And so one of the things that we have, the research has shown, is that Black women, Black men often don't have access to the resources that they should as they venture out and start their businesses. So we talk about the push and the pull, you know, what pushes us into entrepreneurship and what pulls us into entrepreneurship. And so the push is usually the thing that we want to escape, right? It's that, you know, get out. And the thing that is telling us to get out is poor treatment. So persistent long-term conflicts with management, for example, the perception of being undervalued in the workplace, unemployment and long-term unemployment is one of those things. So it's kind of like, I need a job. I'm not having those opportunities. So how do I actually make them come available to me? And so many of us are starting to be employed because of, in a way, the absolute need to be. And then, of course, there is the ceiling effect. So you're a high performer, but there's low reward for what you're doing. Oftentimes we're passed over. Oftentimes, you know, you're training the people who will actually go ahead of you and be positioned for promotion. And then there's the pull. So these are the great things that actually allow us opportunities to start businesses. And so you want to think about your passion. So, you know, the passion for a particular industry and your business style, matching your gifts and combining them with your talents and the daily work that you do. Some people come into entrepreneurship because of new and exciting opportunities that make themselves available. You know, like your side hustle becomes your main hustle. Eventually your entrepreneurship, you might have somebody approach you with a business partnership and you can't turn it down. So those are the new and exciting opportunities. And then of course, purpose. So the young lady who I spoke to earlier, where she's on the train, it's really about, hey, you have a purpose. There's a mission for you to complete. And so I don't want you to miss the train. I don't want you to not fulfill that destiny. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. So we are Black people, and we have to take into context what is happening around us. We see that there are some major shifts that are happening. And so we have to acknowledge that we are now 401 years since our our ancestors first came onto North and South American shores. We know that this is linked to the Abrahamic covenant. We know that there are symbolically a whole lot of replications that are happening at this moment in time that resemble the moments that are recorded in the Bible where the Israelites finally were let go and then moved into the promised land. So the Abrahamic covenant simply says this: know for sure that your descendants will be strangers living temporarily in a land, Egypt, that is not theirs, where they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But on that nation whom your descendants will serve, I will bring judgment, and afterward they will come out of that land with great possessions. So I want us to be always holistic in our thoughts. We're starting businesses. We are obviously in this advanced society. There are these wonderful things that are coming our way. And just as every thought is a prayer, I want you to hold on to this thought. They will come out of that land with great possession. They will come out of that land with great possession. They will come out of that land with great possession. So even though we are in a space where it seems rather chaotic right now, where it seems like things may not change, what I want you to know is that everything that's happening right now is happening because of the change that is coming. So there's always like 4 things that happen in order for there to be a revolutionary kind of change. The first is that there must be a natural disaster. We've already had COVID, and I believe there are other disasters that are coming. The next thing is there will be an economic shutdown or economic disaster, and we've already seen that across the world the economy has simply halted. The next thing is there will be civil unrest, and then following that there will be a civil war. So as we transition, it's not going to be a pie in the sky kind of situation. There will be unrest. There will be a whole bunch of stuff that seem rather chaotic that is going to be happening as the next couple of years unfold, and it might even be less than that. But what we can anticipate is that there is something that is then going to project us forward and move us to that place where we can rise and become what God promised us, that we can receive all of those things. You can move forward now, Ryan. And forward again. So we're talking about emotional intelligence as part of the missing link. When we think about comparing intelligent versus intelligent, what we call IQ, high IQ level individuals with high EI, emotional intelligent individuals. What we know is that the emotionally intelligent individual outperforms the high IQ individual usually 70% of the time. What that means is if you become emotionally intelligent, in tune with your emotions, you become so clear about the right decisions to make. You become so clear about who to work with and who to work for that you'll always succeed. Well, let's say 70% of the time you'll succeed. So successful people are emotionally intelligent people. And if you look at the companies that perform the best on the stock market or in terms of their actual value, what you'll see is this, that they have leaders that know that success comes with leading, not following. But you lead from a place of humility, and you lead from a place where you listen intelligently, you stay in tune with your own emotions, you stay in tune with the emotions of the other people in the room, and you stay in tune with the relationships that are present there. So you don't walk away. What you do is you stay, and you actually then observe, analyze who is present there, and then make your decisions afterwards. So you don't speak first, you're the last to speak. Successful leaders are humble, so we know that you are to be the leader of your company. But what that means is for these individuals who run like the most successful companies in the world, what we know is there's this delicate mix of being gracious along with being authoritative, and within that whole mix, just a nice sense of being humble. And that simply means that you know where you are, that you're not higher or lower than others. You value other people's positions. These are the people who are most successful in our society. So the question is, how do we become emotionally intelligent? And there is a process for doing that. Like I said, there is this book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. They actually have a program, and it is a pretty good program. But I'm going to teach you a way that's rather simple that you can also follow. So this is a process of diving deep and discovering the first moment in time when you experience something that caused you to become afraid. And fear shows itself in a number of ways. So you can think about it this way, and you can connect the dots to that moment if it's still unresolved by asking yourself this question. When was the last time that somebody upset me? When was the last time? And for us as a people, obviously, we've all been moving through the last few days and the last week or so, experiencing the emotions connected with the death of George Floyd and so many others. There's been kind of this ripple effect, right? And so the important thing to know is this, that as we forgive even this situation, it helps us to perform better in our own organizations. It helps us to be able to hire the right people. It helps us to know who we want to collaborate with. So we ask ourselves the question, as I did earlier, like, what do I want from that police officer? But let's raise it up a notch. Let's go all the way to the humanitarian level. What do I want from humanity? right? And so we want to be valued. We want to feel that the way that we're seen is that we're equal to everyone else, that we are not higher or lower than anyone. We're all human. Let's just first of all acknowledge that. And what do we get instead? Well, we're killed, we're lynched, we are treated inequitably, we are treated like we don't really have value in society. So we begin to discover what love looks like. Love is equality. Love is humility. Love is kindness, right? And it's not treating one person as it's valuing. That's what love is. And fear, on the other hand, is all of those opposites and the ways that they show up. But then we begin to think empathically or empathetically about the circumstance and why this has been, right? And one of the places I go is to the spiritual level. And I begin to think about the fight against humanity, and that one of the systematic ways in which humanity itself has been assaulted is to separate us, right? So you divide us out, you create these categories, you tell one category they're higher than the other, and then that same system then is filtered down, and then there's one dominant race that is given the authority to then impose that on all others. And this is the way that we have to think about it. So when we are trained from a very young age as part of this system, we maintain it at all costs, because if I give up the system, then it means somebody else takes over what I own. So there's ownership and loss that's always associated with these things. So once you understand the kind of the battle that humanity itself is experiencing, and then it's filtered down, and then you begin to understand that we as the African nation is seen as the lowest of lows amongst this status, then what we do is we begin to shift it. We begin to shift it first with our thoughts, but then also we then come together, we unify, we oppose the very system that categorizes and divides, and what we do is we pull it all together. So I really believe that this is the destiny of the African nation, to be the unifying force, and everything, absolutely everything, will oppose us. So what we have to do is we have to be smart about it, and this means that we develop a code for exactly how we pursue this. So I'm getting a little bit off track, but the next part is to then not get focused. Like, wrong focus is to then really make this about the different categories. Wrong focus is about saying, no, I need to be up here and you need to be down there. Wrong focus would be saying, I'm going to make you as afraid as you've made me afraid, right? So kind of directing it in the wrong direction, which is fear. When we know better, we do better. So the idea is, until every human being on the planet who has experienced a wound heals, as a humanity, we will not be able to do better. But there is hope, because there are these very simple techniques that allow us to raise our awareness, to become more emotionally intelligent. And as more people get on board and heal their wounds, what will happen is we naturally move up multiple levels. The final piece is to guard our identity. As a nation, we have to begin to own who we are. As a nation, we have to begin to have pride and value ourselves for who we are. And then we have to stop the sabotaging kind of messages and behaviors and thoughts that come from others that are constantly infiltrating and teaching us to hate ourselves. So when we guard our identity, what we begin to say is, okay, I'm connecting with all others who belong to the African nation. And as we connect, then we can connect with others. But for now, we're going to secure our identity. We're going to protect ourselves. And as we protect ourselves, what will happen is we will become a force that can fight some of this darkness. Next. So we have these brain cells called mirror neurons, and I want you to be like cognizant of this, that there is a biological thing that causes us to mirror what we see towards ourselves. So I want you to think about it this way. Each nation each nation in humanity, if you consider it like, you know, see the black man, see the white man, see, you know, the Spaniard, see all the nations that are there. You can make some of them females too. And you begin to think about all the different ways in which all the other nations have pummeled us, have fought with us, have stolen from us, have done all of these things. Mirror neurons allow us to empathize with others. It's a natural thing that all of us do. Some of us are more advanced in it. And so what normally happens is, as someone is harming us, we step into kind of their consciousness, because in a way this is helping us to kind of anticipate their movements. If they're going to strike us, we're going to move out of the way. But we have to see it from their perspective. If they're going to slap us, then we're going to respond a certain way as well. If they're going to insult us, we're going to know their thoughts. We're going to try and figure out their meanings. But here's the problem. Once you have stepped into another person's thought process, right, you kind of get stuck there. And so oftentimes, just as the person has been pointing at you, telling you you're no good, you're never going to be anything, you believe it. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to repair the mirror neurons. And the way that we do that is we do our forgiveness in front of a mirror. You all have mirrors in your house. One of the things that when I say you do your forgiveness in front of a mirror, sometimes people get all suspicious. Well, what I have to say is, if you have a mirror in your house and there's nothing wrong with it right now, and you look in it anyways, then what's the problem with doing a forgiveness in front of a mirror? So, so we do our forgiveness so that we can actually see ourselves, because when we see ourselves, we become the mirror. We become the new person that we look at, that we empathize with, that we have compassion for, that we love. And the other thing is we strip away all the other images that have been basically patterned on top of us. So the mirror actually helps us to repair this very, very intricate. It's still not completely known how the mirror neurons completely function. What we know is they exist, and what we know is that they're linked to empathy. So as we overcome the mirror effect, we're going to talk about things like family. So we forgive people in our families. We forgive institutions. We forgive communities, both our own as well as others. We forgive nations. And what we're looking at is the ways that our families have functioned, the individual harm that they've caused, institutions and the messages that they've sent us, the ways that they've valued us or valued us compared to others. Communities, so looking at nation esteem, for example, community trust, and even togetherness. All of these are parts of the mirror effect. And for nations, the violation that have come, whether that's looting, stealing, destroying, killing, however that has happened, for some nations where there's genocide, sometimes we forgive those as well. So I've been talking about the forgiveness process, and this is how we heal. We forgive the other person, then we forgive ourselves. What we do in this process is we begin to see our fears and the way that we respond. So you can see all of the EI piece woven into this. We also see how we love and how we want to be loved. And then it enables us to see how we've repeated the same violation against ourselves, and helps us to make a new decision to just end that altogether. And so these are the questions I talked about a little bit earlier. What did you want? What did you get instead? How did you feel about it? And then understanding essentially what made this individual behave the way that they did. This is followed by a series of statements where you're actually saying the forgiveness statement out loud. We don't have enough time to go into that, so I'm just going to move on. Next one. Okay, so we have come to the end of the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, I wrote the book 490, Forgive and Live Fearlessly. That's on Amazon. It's available as an ebook as well as an audiobook. I do psychotherapy and coaching, so if anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free to do that. And as I mentioned, the Becoming book project is also here. And if you'd like to reach out to me, my website is drjoan.ca. My email is connect@drjoan.ca. And my cell phone number is here as well.